Welcome back to the show. I'm Colin McKee, and today we're covering a topic that I genuinely have not seen before in the legal world. My guest runs a subscription based law firm, not hourly retainers, not flat fees per case, a subscription like Netflix, but for your legal life. And here's the twist: she's not an attorney, she's a serial entrepreneur who looked at the legal industry from the outside, saw a broken business model, and rebuilt it from scratch. She runs four businesses, is done with work by 2 p.m. every day, and just booked a trip to Barcelona, Mykonos, and Rome. So she's got to be doing something right. Grace Gooray, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
So, Grace, I want to start at the beginning. You have 3 degrees, you run four businesses, built the law firm that has surprised me and been most successful, and you're not even an attorney. So, where does Right Law Group actually come from?
Well, I don't know. I always wanted to be in law, right? My initial plan when I was younger was to become an attorney, right? I loved Matlock growing up. I was like 8 watching Matlock. I was like, "Ooh, I want to do criminal defense." I love that. And somewhere along the way, I think I fell in love with business. My parents owned businesses. I was surrounded by people that did. I think I loved the business world a little bit more. It wasn't something that I wanted to choose. It just happened to be that way that I started focusing a little bit more on business. And then somewhere along the ways, I had a job and I didn't have to anymore. They were so new. They were so small that I had to do both between law and I needed to do business by growing it and doing different things with them to help them grow their revenue, their business, and figuring out along the way. And then I started doing that for multiple people and then multiple law firms. And then I was like, I could do this myself.
That's awesome.
I did.
Along those lines, you said something in our pre-call that really stuck with me, that most lawyers are lawyers first and business owners last, even if they own that firm. So
Yeah.
when that's the case, like, what does that really cost, a managing partner of a law firm if they're law first, business last?
Yeah. Yeah. So most owners, when you go to law school, you're taught the law. You're not actually prepared for real world law, which is a fun fact. Law school doesn't teach you any of that. It just teaches you how to think like a lawyer. That's all law school is. So when you come out and you start your own firm or you start working for places, you have to learn the essence of actually what makes you a lawyer, which is family law, criminal, business, whatever it is. And I've been in the industry with law for, damn near 10, 15 years. And when I had to learn how to do all of this stuff again, like working with clients, doing consultations, working on people's cases, I forget that most people don't know how to switch that side in their brain where you're like, okay, well, now I'm on the business side and now I'm working on a client's file trying to get them a divorce. You only know one way of thinking because law school only teaches you one path of thinking. And it's not as a business owner because it's not ideal. They don't want you to be a business owner, right? They want you to know what you need to know to succeed as an attorney. They want you to work with another firm. They want you to be another cog in the machine, right? That's basically the way of this world. You're another person. You're not built to succeed. So if you don't think of a law firm like a business, you're never going to do it. Law firms are essentially a business, but because lawyers are the ones running them, they don't know, okay, I need to check my numbers. What's my revenue at? What are my ads at? What's my CAC? Most people don't know what that is. There's so many things about being a business owner that people don't think about when you're an attorney. It doesn't even cross their mind because they don't know what they have to pay attention to. They only know the day in and day out. I'm working 12 hours on all my clients and going to court in the morning and doing X, Y, and Z. They're like, okay, I'm getting new clients. I'm getting a new person here or there, but they never start to think about like, what's my bottom line? What are my numbers? What's my revenue? What's my expenses? Where do I spend this time? How do I pay myself? Most of them don't pay themselves. Most of them go on the old law firm system where it's, you pay yourself once a year or you pay yourself out of profits. But if you're not paying yourself and you don't know where you're going, then how are you going to know that you need to grow? If you don't take care of yourself, then how are you going to take care of a business or much less other employees? Which is why a lot of attorneys that start a firm, they stay pretty small or they stay as solos.
Right. Or they're siloed as a part of a larger firm. To your point, that's really how our education system's set, is just to, yeah, you be a cog, right?
Exactly.
So walk me through how Netflix price increase email inspires you to build a subscription based law firm, because that's a weird origin story.
Yeah, I don't know. Netflix and Apple, every time they upgrade their subscription, they send you an email. And I think I remember specifically it was Netflix. And they sent me an email and they're like, oh, yeah, in a month or two, our prices are increasing. And I looked at this email and I just remember laughing. And I was just like, okay, so like, am I going to stop using and I thought about that and I was like, wait, that's probably how most people feel when they get these emails. They're like, I'm already using you. Why am I going to stop paying you now because you're raising a dollar or two? Like as inconvenient as it is, like if we're thinking about it, do we really think we're going to stop watching TV? Like it's a sense of enjoyment, right? Like it's an escape from the world. Getting a lawyer is an essential part, right? That's more essential. So I thought about it in the same way and I was like, okay, well, if people are probably like me thinking like, okay, like it's inconvenient, you're probably going to curse them in your brain, but you're not going to actually cancel them. And I was like, you know what? I could do something. I can work with that. I can work with that. And then I started it within the law firm and then I started it across all my businesses. It's one of those things where you don't think about recurring revenue enough. Like, how can you get recurring revenue without lifting an existing finger? And that transformed my law firm like amazingly. I was able to start having predictable, consistent revenue every single month while still getting other ones, and having a consistent amount of revenue in every single month is a game changer. You're not stressing about different things, especially when you're first starting a business or a firm. It becomes so easy to just be like, oh my goodness, like this this is revolutionary. It's so different.
Yeah, it really is. Congratulations.
Thank
Brilliant
you.
idea. Brilliant. So let's talk for a second about the business case. It's pretty striking. So you told me that the average firm is getting around $7,500 per client lifetime. So contrast that with your subscription model. What are you getting from?
Yeah. So hourly retainers versus subscription, I would say subscriptions, I'm probably up to maybe 20 to 25 per life cycle of a client. And it's on a consistent basis because we're able to take people from start to finish. So people don't think about it. If you're paying this over time, and again, you have to build it right for your firm. It's it took a little trial and error to figure out where the right numbers were, where and how to do it. But if you can figure out how to make it work for your firm, it works very well because the life cycle of my clients, they stay with me longer from start to finish. I have less people leaving in the middle of a case or because they no longer can afford it. Or, I mean, there are a few that do age out eventually like that, but majority are going to be through the life cycle of a case. And the life cycle of each of these clients are about 20 to 23, $25,000 per client. So I would say that's a pretty good chunk of it when considering, depending where you are in California or in the States. It's funny because hourly retainers will go anywhere from 3,500 to 15 to 20,000 if you go to Northern California, right? So that's kind of the scale. And we're one of the only firms that operate across the entire California for our entire business. We're not just segregated to certain counties or places. We operate across the entire state. And these things are making the biggest difference. Like if you tell someone to pay 10, 15,000, up to $20,000 if you're in Northern California at once, most people in Northern California won't bucket that. I mean, some of them will, but a lot of them are tech. So they're in tech, so it's not so much. But sometimes when they realize how fast that goes through because of an hourly bill, they're done after that. They're like, "Well, I don't want to work with you anymore." You're like, "You're calling me in a month, month and a half to tell me to re-up another 20,000."
Makes sense. So you've got subscriptions at different tiers.
Mhm.
You've got flat fees, then you have classes.
Yes.
How do you actually figure out which lane a client goes into in those different options?
So we pre-screen, I guess, our consults maybe twice. Our initial form and intake for them to fill out is already a sense screening, which will set them up for a normal case evaluation. And then if there's something that gets flagged in the way it was written or certain words, they'll get screened again. And to screen whether or not they're looking for, legal advice or what they are. And then based on what that is, the receptionist will instantly offer a class, a paid consultation, or any of those avenues. We pretty much do a lot when it comes to the intaking and the filtering just to make sure. But our actual experts that are giving the consultations, we will vary them in a couple of ways. We will tell them, we will only give them two options, I guess, right? Like, we will whittle it down to, what your price is, what it is that you want, and we'll kind of customize what it is. And we're like, here's your option, here's your subscription, here's a class, based on what it is, or, whatever the difference is between them. But the case evaluators and then the intakes and the code words that are in them that trigger like a second intake is basically how we make sure they're screened to get to the right place.
Yeah, and that's huge. I think a lot of firms don't put enough emphasis on how important the screening process is to using your resources well and efficiently. You know, it's a game changer. It really is. Instead of getting these calls and people just want free legal advice, they're just blocking up the lines. Time's money. So, and you want to get them what they're looking for too, right? It's a service for them.
No, I'm not gonna waste my time. Like, if I clear a couple hours a day, I won't say a couple hours, but I'd say I cleared a few spots in the morning where I will personally take some consults, right?
Mhm.
And I remember always telling my team, it's like, my time is the most expensive. So if someone is going to do it, make sure I am getting someone that I want to speak to. If it's not right, then make sure it goes on someone else's calendar. Not that it's anyone's less time. It's more like, okay, who has a better aspect to self? So we have another filter that we do in our intakes that we probably don't really tell people, but there's certain people that we send certain consults to or certain things. Like, you can tell the way someone's written something in theirs that it's an emotional story or it's something. So I have someone that's such full of empathy and like just loves people that likes to take those cases. So I give them to them. I like the analytical brain. I like the sterner person, the one that's like, this is what I want. Rah, rah, rah. And I was like, okay, cool. Cause then I'm like, I can communicate with that type of person because no one could sway me. Like, I have a hard personality too. So it's easy to communicate with that. So I kind of do a little bit of like juggling with who gets what when it do those consults. And there's people that like certain things. Like, we have different people on staff, Indians, Filipinos, different languages. We have people from all walks. So when they're doing those consults, some of them like to talk to people in their native language with it, and some people don't. So then we kind of shuffle those around. So it's really different, but like, those are some of the little things that we do to make sure like it's a personality match, which is weird to say because you think it'd take a little bit more time. It doesn't really take that much time because we have such a well-flowing system, but it is worth it because now the client is getting an experience they never thought they would, because now they're talking to somebody that is willing to go that extra mile based on what their situation is. Like, they feel like they're talking to someone that solely understands their problem. And half the time that's conversion.
Yep. So another selling point to the subscription model, and I don't know if everyone out there really realizes this, is hourly billing. The incentive structure is really working against the client. And can you kind of break that down for the audience, how that works and why that is?
Yes. So hourly billing, fun fact, all firms are built, their bonuses are built on billable hours or collectible billables. You can bill as many hours as you want, right? But it's the collectible billable because they have to be able to collect that from the client. So Attorneys and paralegals, legal assistants, they all have an hourly rate attached to them, depending on experience. So attorneys can be anywhere from like 350 to like 750, depending where, state, experience, specialty. Paralegals are commonly anywhere between like 175, 275 range. Legal secretary shouldn't be above 150. They should be 75 to 150, depending on, how long and specialty and things like that. So every time you speak to someone or you call your firm to talk to a client or call to talk to your attorney, you have to talk to technically two or three people before that happens. You talk to the receptionist. Sometimes you'll go to the legal assistant. Sometimes you'll go to the paralegal before you ever get booked. And so everyone is allowed to bill in 6-minute increments. So every 6 minutes is a point. And if you are a second, 6 minutes and 1 second, you're allowed to bill a point two. So a point two of your billable hour. So at some point when you talk to your attorney, you're doing your introductory call, you're doing whatever, and you're talking to them for an hour. You're getting, almost $600, $550 an hour, let's say on average. And then combine that across your entire case. Every time you go to court, you're billing on top of that. If they have to travel to your court, they're billing you for that travel. If they park, if they do this, do that, anything they do, if they're reviewing your case before file, that 20 minutes that you think that they sound unprepared for or whatever it is, they're spending that 20 minutes going over whether it's in front of you or whether it's before, they're billing you for that 20 minutes because they have to account for their hours. And a lot of firms, ooh, reasonable firms have some reasonable daily billable hour rates, which is about 6 hours a day. And that's reasonable, right? Most firms, like some of the bigger ones, they're 7 or 8 hour billable days. And in an 8-hour day, it is very hard to get an 8-hour billable day.
Hmm.
So that's where overbilling comes from. That's where employers are more incentivized to be like, well, I'm going to tack on this here. I'm going to go figure out what I have to do here. Because while they may want to help a client at the end of the day, if their firm isn't happy that they're not bringing in billables or collectible billables, then they're losing money.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's people don't realize it, but yeah, it's kind of a racket there, and you understand we're all in it to make money, and they're incentivized. But at the end of the day, in a situation with family law, they're really just looking for a solution at the end of the day, not tracking down billable hours.
Right.
So,
And
it,
that's kind of the biggest thing. Like I actually had one person I was talking to and I was letting them know, okay, like this is how the subscription works. This is what we do. And now we'll be able to help you throughout the entirety of your case. And she flat out was like, I don't feel comfortable working with a firm that doesn't offer an hourly billable rate. And I said, if you want to go get charged $750 an hour for someone to tell you how to do your case, by all means, you are
yeah.
welcome to go. I did
And
not.
did you?
I did not ask her. I was like, "You're welcome to go." I was like, "I can give you some recommendations."
Right. Did she go or did she stay?
No, I think she called again, like, maybe, like, a month and a half later, and I was like, "Well, you spent all that money on that retainer initially. You could have just started, but, now we gotta fix someone else's stuff." I was like, but that's the thing,
Something new. Right.
That's it. They all come back at
Yep.
some point or another. My assistant laughs every time. She's always like, someone called. She was like, someone just came back from one of your consults, and I was like, okay. And she was like, dude, it was like 2 months ago, and I was like, but they said the only thing they remembered was you. They were like, I didn't know how to find you. I just remembered she said this, and I was like, I don't know. She's like, that's the one thing across my consults that they always consistently say. And she's like, how do you do that? I was like, I don't know. I don't lie to them. I don't do the fluff. I don't do fluff and I don't do bullshit. It's literally straight what you see, which is why my consults are the same way. I guess my businesses are the same way. Like I'm not fun to work with. I'm kind of to the point. So it's like, I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but the ones that are, it's because they actually want to learn something. They actually want to do something. They're actually ready to like, okay, I can commit to this because I want my divorce to go smoothly. I want this, and this to happen. And we do something a lot of firms don't. We're highly tech. Like we when I started this, it was with the intent for it to be like to mold a business, but also merge it with tech. I love technology. We all love technology. I don't know, but also convenience. And I started realizing across my businesses, my time was money. So if people are spending more time with me, that's less time I can buy me.
Hmm. Makes sense. So you told me something, to that point that every time you start a business, you tell your husband, "Give me a year, and
Mhm.
I'll take 1 year and make the business a priority, and then come back, buy your time." Is
Yeah.
that still your model?
Yeah, always. I just launched another business in January and I kind of tell him the same thing every single time. I was like, give me a year. He's like, most of the time it ends up being less, but I was like, give me 1 year to put you on the back burner. And he kind of knows what that means by now. It's not like I'm just going to ignore him for a year, but he knows like my priority of where it comes from now. He knows I'm going to work randomly in the middle of the night. He knows if someone needs me or there's an email, I'm going to prioritize that. He knows if we're on one of our trips, which we travel probably, every month we're gone for at least 2 weeks a time maybe, and it just kind of depends, but he knows that I'm going to be like doing it. So when we do go out on date nights, I don't take business cards, I don't take anything, like I do spend my time with him, right? Like that's like every 2 weeks. But when it comes to like the business, it is my new baby. And he knows like trips wherever. And we kind of have a thing where it's like if I'm on my phone or we're watching TV or we're traveling, he's like, "What are you doing?" And if I'm like work or I say Maria, who's the person that runs most of my business, says, he's like, "Okay, never mind." He's like, "I can't say anything." Because he knows like, okay, that's your attention. He's like, "I know where that goes." So those are kind of little code words where he knows it's like, okay, never mind. I can't make fun of you. I can't tell you I need you present. So but it's worked for the last like, 4 or 5 years. Every year we've kind of brought back a little bit thing and our trips have gotten more. And my husband was a firefighter. He worked for Cal Fire. And at some point we decided to like up and move and do a bunch of things. And we had this conversation about him not working and he was just like, "Why?" And I was like, "Because if I need to give you my attention and you need to have it when you want it, we need to come up with a better system because if we're doing these businesses and I want to do this, I need to compensate my time with you in another way." So that was our other way. So now we have the convenience for the time to spend it in weird times when we didn't think we would.
Sounds like a great partnership. Well, Grace, this has been exactly what I had hoped it would be. You built something that's genuinely different, not just in law, but in how you think about building businesses, buying back your time, and creating systems that don't depend on you showing up every day. And I applaud you for it. So, for anyone listening who's dealing with a legal situation and wants to know more about Right Litigation Group, where should they go?
We have a website, rightlitigatongroup.com. You're welcome to go there. Our Instagram, social media, anything would be, it's pretty much under the name. Do everything for California. We do family law, business, criminal, and again, subscriptions.
Awesome. Awesome. And for any business owner or attorney out there that's heard what Grace has built and thought, I need that for my business. That's exactly what we do at Endeavors AI. Head to endeavorsai.com and learn more. Hit subscribe for whoever's listening, and I will see you on the next one.